The space station floated quietly above the gray-blue planet. Inside, humans and aliens worked together under the Federation rules. No one broke protocol, especially not near the telepaths. They were rare, powerful, and always watching, and among them was her, Soraya. She walked with grace, tall and calm. Her silver eyes glowing gently. Everyone respected her, kept their thoughts clean around her, because the telepaths didn't need to ask questions. They heard your thoughts. Even the private ones. Jack was a simple human technician. He fixed pipes, cleaned filters, and stayed out of trouble. He knew the rules, keep your head down. But one day, while repairing a cooling vent, he saw her walk past, and in that exact second, something human happened. His brain whispered a thought quick. Wild, and absolutely not allowed. She's beautiful. But not just that. His mind filled in other things. He imagined her skin glowing under soft light. Imagined her voice saying his name. Imagined things no man should think about a telepath. Jack froze. She turned. Their eyes met, and she smiled. Not a normal smile, not polite, not distant, but a slow, knowing smile that reached only one side of her face, like she had heard everything and liked it. Jack's heart pounded. He dropped his wrench and quickly looked away. I'm sorry, he stammered, though he hadn't said a word aloud. I didn't mean. She said nothing, just smirked, turned, and walked away, her long coat swaying behind her. The other crew members looked at Jack with wide eyes. He just stood there, sweating, shaking, and full of shame. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the moment in his mind. Why didn't she report him? Why didn't she seem angry? Was she going to tell the supervisors later? The next day, he avoided her. He worked faster, stayed in the lower maintenance halls. He didn't want to see her, didn't want to feel watched, but somehow she kept showing up. By the food station, she stood beside him, silent. By the elevator, she entered right after him, and in the engine room. When he was alone, she walked in and leaned against the wall. You think very loudly. Jack, she said softly. He dropped his tablet in shock. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I swear, I respect you, you imagine a lot. She interrupted, smiling slightly again. And you apologize too much. He blinked, unsure what to say. This wasn't how telepaths talked. They were cold, distant, untouchable. But she was standing close now, looking at him like she wanted something, or maybe like she understood something he didn't. Why aren't you angry? He finally asked. She tilted her head. Why would I be angry? Because I thought those things about you. You're a human, she said. Your thoughts are not weapons, just windows. Then she stepped even closer, so close he could feel her breath. I've read thoughts worse than yours, darker, colder. But yours? They're warm, she whispered. Real. Jack couldn't breathe. He wanted to say something clever, or smart, or respectful, but all he could say was, You're not like the others. She smiled again, this time softer. Neither are you. Then she left, just like that, leaving behind only her words, and a heartbeat that wouldn't slow down. That night, Jack stared at the ceiling of his small bunk, his hands behind his head, his chest tight with confusion. He didn't know what game she was playing, or if it was a game at all. But one thing was clear. She had read his mind, and instead of punishment, she smiled, and that smile, it changed everything. Asterisk. Everyone on the station knew the rules, especially the unwritten ones. Don't touch a telepath. Don't joke around them. Don't think anything dirty, because they'll hear it, and they never, ever flirt back. But Soraya wasn't like the others. Jack tried to forget the moment, the smile, the words, but every time he turned a corner, she was there, silent, tall, watching him with those silver eyes. She didn't speak often, but when she did, her words stayed in his head for hours. He thought he was going crazy. She was a telepath way out of his league, way out of his species. She didn't laugh, didn't giggle, didn't tease, and yet there was something strange in how she moved when she passed him, like her steps slowed near him, like she was listening to something only she could hear. His thoughts, his feelings, his heartbeat. Maybe one day, Jack was working on a damaged conduit under the central core. It was hot, loud, and dirty, the kind of place no telepath would ever go. He was alone, or so he thought, until a voice echoed behind him. You imagine us as cold, don't you? He nearly hit his head. She was standing there again, arms crossed, eyes calm. I didn't know you were. This is restricted access. I gave myself permission, she replied. Jack wiped sweat off his face, trying not to think anything, trying not to let his mind wander to the way her voice slid into his ears like music. She crouched beside him, surprising him again. No telepath ever crouched, especially not next to a dirty human technician. Why do you try so hard to hide your thoughts? She asked softly. Because if I don't, I'll get in trouble, he replied. I already crossed the line. No, she said, her fingers brushing the floor just beside his. You stepped toward the truth. He stared at her, unsure. Are you playing with me? She turned her head, curious. Playing? You know, he said, heart racing, teasing, flirting, messing with my mind. She blinked, then smiled again, that same half-smile that haunted him. My kind doesn't flirt, she said. But maybe we should. Jack didn't know how to respond. This wasn't a joke. It wasn't a test. It felt like she was serious. But why? What would a being like her, born with power, raised with silence, want with someone like him? She stood up and reached down, offering him her hand. He hesitated, then took it. Her skin was cool and soft, but the moment they touched, a spark ran through his arm like a wave of electricity. He gasped, and she tilted her head again, listening to something only she could hear. You think I'm lonely, she whispered. His eyes widened. I didn't say, you didn't have to. She said, I heard it anyway, and you're not wrong. She looked away then, for the first time, like maybe she didn't want him to hear what she was thinking now. But she couldn't block him out. She had opened something, let something in. You're the first human I've met who doesn't lie to himself, she said. Most of you are afraid of your own thoughts. But you, even when you're scared, you feel everything. And that interests me. She turned to leave, then paused. You will meet me at Observation Deck 7 tonight, she said, not a question, but a quiet command. Then, she was gone again, like smoke, leaving Jack on the floor, stunned, confused, shaking. Later that night, he stood in front of the deck doors, thinking, is this a trap? Am I being tested? Or does she really mean it? The doors slid open, and there she was, standing under the stars, her back turned, the vast galaxy shining behind her. He stepped in, unsure. She didn't move, didn't look at him, just said, I read your mind again. He gulped. I'm sorry. You should stop saying that, she said gently. I saw a memory, she continued. A little boy, alone in a field, looking up at the stars. That was you, Jack nodded, slowly surprised she had seen that. And I saw what you wished for. Someone who didn't just hear you, but understood you. She turned around then, her face unreadable, her voice quiet. I think I want that too. The next morning, Jack received an alert on his communicator. Assigned to Auxiliary Hull Repairs, Sector 4. Partner, Soraya. He stared at the screen, shocked. That sector was deep outside the station, full of broken panels and unstable vents. No cameras, no guards, no audience, just two people in full suits, tethered in space. And her Jack didn't know if it was a mission or a message. Was she serious about what she said? Or was this the Federation's way of watching them? When he reached the airlock, she was already suited up, helmet in hand. She turned and said softly, Don't be afraid. I'm not, he lied, adjusting his gloves to hide his shaking fingers. You are, she replied calmly. Your thoughts are louder out here. They floated through the station's outer hull, mag boots clinking against steel. Jack focused on his tools, avoiding eye contact, but she kept glancing at him like she wasn't here for repairs, like he was the subject of the mission, not The hull. I'm curious, she said through cums. Do human males always think like this? Jack nearly dropped his scanner. What do you mean? He asked, voice cracking. You imagine me differently. Her voice wasn't angry, it was amused. I don't mean to, he stammered. It's just how the mind works. Thoughts are natural, right? She didn't respond, only drifted closer, close enough to reach out. If she wanted, but she didn't touch, she listened to everything he wasn't saying. Back on my planet, she finally said, they teach us to fear feelings, to silence them, bury them, call them weakness. But your thoughts, they're loud, raw, alive. It scares me. Jack looked at her through his helmet. You? Scared? Yes, she said, voice smaller now, because every time I hear your thoughts, I don't want to stop. There was silence between them, only the hum of space and the station in the distance. Two minds floating in a world with no gravity and, suddenly, no rules. I'm not trying to tempt you, Jack whispered. I swear. She turned to him, her visor reflecting his face. But what if I want to be tempted? She asked. He stared at her, stunned, unsure if he heard that right. Before he could speak, an alarm blinked on his wrist pad. Pressure leak detected. A panel had shifted loose under their feet. Venting oxygen fast, Jack reacted fast, hooking himself to the panel edge and grabbing a patch kit. Hold still, I can fix it. She didn't move. Just watched him work. Her voice came in quietly. I see it now. What? He asked, struggling with the patch. Why human females fight over you? He froze. They don't. But they would, she said, like she had read their memories too. You act humble, but you protect, you repair, you feel deeply. On my world, males are silent, predictable. But you bleed passion. The leak sealed. Jack exhaled slowly. His hands trembled not from fear, but from her words. She wasn't mocking him. She was studying him like he was. A book she couldn't put down. As they drifted back to the station, she said softly, You passed. Passed what? He asked, confused. The test, she said. I wanted to see if your mind changes under pressure. It didn't. Jack stepped into the airlock, unsure what to feel. Everything was spinning, not just the station, but inside his chest. He wasn't just a human to her anymore. He was something new, something she couldn't predict. And that terrified her. But she kept coming closer anyway. That night, alone in his room, Jack lay awake. He thought about her eyes, her voice, and her words. You passed. He didn't know what came next. But one thing was clear. She had tested his mind, but it was his heart that kept her coming back. Asterisk Saraya was not like the others, not anymore. She had broken a rule even. Telepaths feared to touch. She had let a human stay in her thoughts. And now she couldn't pull him out. Jack didn't know it yet, but his mind had left fingerprints inside hers, feelings she couldn't erase, images she replayed in silence when no one else was near. She sat alone in the quiet observation dome. Stars spread across the glass like diamonds on ink, but her eyes were closed. Because what she wanted to see wasn't out there. It was inside his memory. She had read his mind again, not by force, but because his thoughts were like open flames, warm and flickering. She saw his past, the dusty farm, the broken machines. He learned to fix his father's silence, his mother's absence, the cold dinners, the long nights staring at the sky, wishing, always wishing, for someone to talk to. Someone who would listen without laughing. Someone who would stay, no alien. Thought like this. They were structured, efficient, emotionless. But Jack? His heart was a wildfire, and she was tired of the cold. That day, she appeared near the hydroponics bay, where Jack was checking filters. He flinched when he saw her, not out of fear, but out of the weight she brought with her. Because every time she appeared, something inside him changed. Why do you keep finding me? He asked, tired but curious. I'm not finding you, she replied softly. I'm following something. He stood still, hands muddy from plant gel. She stepped closer, ignoring the mess, ignoring the stares of others nearby. You felt. Pain, she said. You feel it still. Jack nodded. Everyone does. But you hide it with kindness. She said, that's rare. He didn't know what to say. No one had ever looked inside him and understood. They either pitied him or ignored him, but she looked like she saw value in the broken pieces. Then, suddenly, her voice turned quiet, almost shy. I saw how you see me, she whispered. Jack's breath caught in his throat. I didn't mean to. I know, she interrupted. But I liked it, he blinked, heart pounding. Why? He asked. I thought your people weren't like that. They're not, she said. But I'm becoming something else. Then she did something no telepath ever did. She touched his chest just over his heartbeat and closed her eyes. Jack stood frozen as her fingers rested lightly on him, not pushing, not demanding, just feeling. And in that moment, she didn't need to read thoughts. She could hear the answer in his pulse. He wasn't lying. He truly saw her, not as an alien, not as a weapon, but as a woman. When she opened her eyes, she whispered, Do you know how rare that is? To be seen without fear? No, Jack replied honestly, but maybe that's what makes it matter. She stepped back, her hands still tingling. You make me question everything I was taught, she said, and yet, I don't want to stop. Jack wanted to hold her then, but he didn't, because he didn't want to ruin the moment. So he just smiled and said, I don't want to stop either. She walked away slowly. But unlike all the other times, this time. She looked back over her shoulder, and her smile wasn't a test, or a joke, or a mask. It was real, it was soft, and it was meant for him. That night in her private quarters, Soraya stood in front of a mirror. She touched her own face like she was meeting herself for the first time, not as a telepath, not as a soldier of silence, but as someone who could feel, and she whispered one word, Jack. Love wasn't forbidden, but for a telepath, it might as well have been a crime. They were trained from birth to observe, not to feel, to listen, not to connect. Emotions were considered noise, and falling in love with a human? Unthinkable, but Soraya had already done it, quietly, secretly, completely. The first report came quietly, a short message from another officer on the station. Telepath Soraya is seen too often near the human technician. Suspected mental breach, potential emotional deviation. Jack didn't know. He was fixing cables when the station guards called him. You've been summoned, one said. By the Oversight Council. He blinked, confused. Why? What did I do? Follow us, was all they said. He entered the cold chamber alone. White walls, quiet voices, glowing red symbols. High above, the telepath elders watched him like statues. Soraya stood on the other side of the room, silent. Her face unreadable, human. The lead elder spoke. Have you been aware that your mind has been read without consent? Jack looked at Soraya, who said nothing. Yes, he said, but I wasn't harmed. That is not the question. The elder snapped. Did you allow it? I didn't stop it, Jack said, because I didn't want to. Gasps echoed through the room. Do you understand the danger? Another elder asked. She has crossed a boundary, and so have you. Telepaths must remain clean, untouched by chaotic human emotion. You are. Noise, Jack clenched his fists. She didn't hurt me, he said. She saved me. I was just a tool on this station until she looked into my mind. And she didn't just see my thoughts, she understood them. The room went still. Then one voice said, and now she is unstable. Soraya finally spoke, voice clear and calm. No, I am awake. The elders stared at her in silence. Do you deny the bond? They asked. No, she said. I embrace it. You are breaking the law of silence. One elder warned. If you do not retreat from this path, your mind will be blocked. You will lose your abilities, your position, your name. Jack turned to her, his voice trembling. You don't have to do this. But she just looked at him and said, You showed me that feeling is not weakness. You made me human in ways my own kind never could. She stepped forward and removed the crystal badge from her uniform. her symbol of rank. "I choose the noise," she said. "I choose him." The decision was made. There was no trial, no delay. The elders raised their hands, and a quiet hum filled the room as the mental seal was activated. Jack saw her body shake just once, a sharp breath, then stillness. She didn't scream, but something in her eyes dimmed. A light flickered out, and then she collapsed. Jack ran to her, catching her before she hit the ground. He held her in his arms, her body cold. Her eyes slowly opened, and she whispered, "I can't hear them anymore. They're all quiet." Jack brushed the hair from her face. "You're not alone," he said, voice shaking. "You still have me." She nodded slowly. "For the first time. It feels right." And though she had lost her title, her gifts, and her place, she had kept the one thing that mattered, her choice. And him, asterisk, the door closed behind them with a soft hiss. And just like that, Soraya was no longer a telepath. No longer a guardian of thought, a reader of minds. No longer one of them. She stood still in the quiet hallway, dressed now in a plain gray jumpsuit. Her long white coat and glowing badge were gone. She reached out with her senses instinctively. But nothing came, no voices, no whispers. No thoughts, only silence, true, heavy silence. It was over. Everything she had been taught to believe erased with one decision. One human. Jack walked beside her, unsure what to say. He had never seen her so quiet, not in the way telepaths were trained to be. This was different. She looked small now, vulnerable, mortal. They boarded the civilian shuttle in silence, heading toward the Earth colony orbiting below. A place where no one cared about mental powers. Where people lived, worked, struggled, and felt. A place where she could start over, if she dared to. In the days that followed, Soraya struggled. She didn't know how to sleep her people never dreamed. She didn't know how to cry her people never shed tears. But one night, she broke. The stars outside the window blurred, and her hands trembled. "I feel everything now," she whispered to Jack, curled on his couch. "It's too loud inside me." He sat beside her and wrapped his arm around her. "You were always strong," he said, "but now you're brave too. Brave enough to feel." She looked at him, her eyes glassy. "I hear nothing from you anymore," she said. "Not even thoughts. I miss the noise." Jack leaned closer and whispered, "Then let me say what I always thought. You are beautiful. Not because of your mind, but because of your heart." She didn't speak. Instead, she leaned against him, quietly breathing him in. For the first time, she didn't need to read him. She just trusted. The next morning, she helped him repair a weather tower on the colony's edge. Her hands were clumsy, unused to tools. She dropped wires, cursed softly under her breath. Jack laughed. "You're terrible at this." She glared at him, then smiled. "Teach me." And so he did. They worked together every day, and every day she learned something new, how to feel pride in fixing something, how to enjoy a warm drink on a cold morning, how to watch the sky and wait for someone, instead of just knowing their thoughts before they spoke. People stared at first. An alien girl, stripped of power, walking beside a human, laughing like she belonged. But slowly, they accepted her, because Soraya, once feared, had become something rare, human, in the best way. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the colony in gold, Soraya sat beside Jack on a rooftop. "Do you regret it?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "I lost my voice," she said, "but I found my soul." He took her hand, and this time, there was no spark of power, no sudden thoughts shared, just warmth and skin and silence. "I used to know what people wanted before. They said it," she said. "Now I wait." Jack smiled. "And I hope I'm worth waiting for." She leaned on his shoulder. "You are," she whispered. "You always were." That night, under a sky with no stars, only clouds and quiet wind, Soraya, the once feared mind reader, finally slept, not in a chamber of silence, but in the arms of someone who never needed to be read, only loved. Years passed, The war ended, the station shut down, and people moved on. New technologies came, leaders changed, and the galaxy forgot the old rules. But in a quiet human colony near the edge of settled space, a story still lived, not in books, but in the way a woman smiled at a man across the dinner table. Soraya now went by Sarah, no longer a name feared by aliens, no longer a badge of silence. She wore Earth clothes, drank Earth tea, and sometimes even argued over grocery lists. But nothing in her life was normal, not really, because she had once been a telepath. And once she had chosen love over power. Jack had aged a little, lines touched his face, but not his eyes. He still fixed machines, still got his hands dirty, and every evening he came home to her, the alien girl who had once read his mind, and now only held his hand. One afternoon, Jack found an old file on his tablet, a recording from the space station's security feed. The first day he ever saw her, there she was, walking past, and there he was staring, frozen, awkward, and there it was. That smirk, small, tilted, knowing. He laughed, louder than he expected. Soraya walked in, wiping her hands on a towel. "What's funny?" she asked. He turned the screen to her. She squinted, smiled softly, and whispered, "Oh, that day, you terrified me," he said. "You embarrassed yourself." She replied playfully, "I thought I was done for. I thought you were interesting." He stood up and walked over. "You lost everything because of me," he said quietly. She tilted her head and looked up at him. "No," she said. "I gained everything because of you. I gained me." She wrapped her arms around him slowly, and for a moment, they didn't speak. There were no thoughts to read, no powers to use, just two souls that had found each other across impossible odds. Later that night, sitting outside their small home, they watched the wind move through the tall alien trees. Children played nearby, laughter echoing in the twilight. One of the little girls ran up and jumped into Soraya's lap. "Tell me a story," the girl said. Soraya smiled, brushing the child's hair. "Which one?" "The one about the human and the alien girl." Soraya glanced at Jack, who was sipping tea nearby. She leaned closer to the child and whispered, "Well, once upon a time, a human thought something very silly." The girl giggled. "What did he think?" Soraya grinned. "Something he shouldn't have. But instead of getting punished, something wonderful happened." "What?" the child asked, eyes wide. Soraya looked at Jack. He made the alien girl feel, and she never wanted to stop feeling again. The child smiled and ran off, and Soraya turned to Jack, who was already watching her. He raised an eyebrow. "Silly thought?" She smirked. "The same one you're having right now," Jack chuckled. "Still reading me?" She shook her head. "No, but I know you." He reached out, took her hand and whispered, "Still worth it?" She leaned her head on his shoulder. Every second, and under a sky of fading stars, where no law of silence remained, where no rules held them apart, the smirk that had started everything still remained, wiser, softer, but just as real, because love doesn't need mind reading, just one look, one choice, and one unforgettable smile.